Hey guys, how's it going? It's 3:30 in the afternoon on February 16th, 2019. This is turning out to be an interesting weekend now. Um, what I originally thought for me was going to be a somewhat boring weekend, just because of what's going on with my son and his physical. He's here. He's just being quiet.
Yeah.
He's being quiet. I just grabbed a snack because that's what I do. Um, it seems like so. Anytime I start a live stream, it's like, okay, well, I know I'm going to be talking about this for a little bit, but we did our first initial drawing. Started talking about what we wanted to see and what we didn't. For those of you that haven't seen Freight Yard Manager, and I don't know what it looks like on your screen, and maybe I haven't gone into everything. I haven't been into this for another 8 years. This is Freight Yard Manager. I just installed it. Now, the reason why I installed it was Emmett wanted some inspiration. He said he wanted an idea as to what we do want and what we don't want. So we go into the Freight Yard Manager here. This is it continues to get updates, which is really cool. I don't want to really show. Well, I guess that's a public email, anyways. But anyways, I'm on the main server. So there's a main server that it connects to. I know there's a yard duty as well. But that's not what I wanted to show. No, I don't want Edmonton. Where's my map? Do you remember where our map is? Or do I have to go to...
Colorado, it's in...
Yeah, I forget how to go to the tutorials on this thing. See, this is enter. Ugh. Update my map list. Where's my... what is my maps? Is that my map? Oh, okay, there we go. Perfect. Oh, look at that. It even now that's pretty cool. It goes back to where we were. See how that I guess that was a save where we were kicking the cars.
Yeah, it's a little bit before, yeah.
Oh yeah, well that's kind of cool. So this is the tutorial in now I'm not giving this program anywhere near as justice that I should, because this is quite a cool program.
Car.
Yeah, I know it's a car. Thank you. But anyways, I started switching this with Emmett for inspiration. I hadn't been in it for years. I think it's been about 8 years since I've been into it. Now, I'm not going to start doing live streams of Freight Yard Manager, and there's probably a reason why. From what you see on here, this isn't your typical live stream. Live streams often get a lot of views for nice 3D graphics, beautiful eye candy, stuff that really get you involved in what's taking place. So what we had done was we started switching this yard. Yes, it's a car. How do I stop it from saying that? It wasn't saying that before. Anyways, whatever. Here. Is this going to say engine?
Engine.
Thank you. But these are the industry numbers it goes to, and then you can go through, and there's all kinds of filters, which is really cool. I remember back in the day I was running this. Now, looking on this on a high definition screen, and I haven't figured out a way how you can zoom it in anymore. It is hard on the eyes from where I'm at. I can't scale it. I can't zoom it in any more that I'm aware of.
Middle mouse wheel, but not the mouse wheel.
No, that doesn't do it. I was going to say view maps and trains, channel communication, yard, state, railroad, and car locations. No, I don't know of a unless there's something in the properties that I overlooked, but. And this is you're on a server that serves Freight Yard Manager. It does all the stuff for Freight Yard Manager and everything, and that's great. They have a huge network of 1,000 some odd yards all across North. I think it's just North America.
I think it's 4,000 something.
No.
I think so.
No, it was about 1,600. I can actually see. Hold on a second. I don't want to talk too long about this. I want to talk about what we're doing. But, anyways, let me minimize that for a minute. There's your maps numbers right there. 1,462. Currently on the server.
I got the 4 in the wrong spot.
So, as you can see, activity's going all over the place, blah, blah, blah. And that's cool. And I spent a great deal, especially when you had free time. Here's the strengths and weaknesses that I find for Freight Yard Manager. And I'm going to be critiquing. Is that what I'm saying? Critique?
A critic?
Critiquing. I don't know. Whatever. I'm going to be critical as far as what works and doesn't work for both myself and Emmett. He actually likes this top-down view. He likes it more than Run 8, apparently. Is that what you said?
I like it similar to.
Similar? You made it sound like you liked it more.
I just like the yard managing type view, I guess.
Oh, I see. So, in other words, you're seeing the yard from... You're seeing the whole yard instead of seeing it from the engine. You like being a yardmaster, a planner.
Yeah.
So do I. I like that part, too. You're not much for dispatching, though.
I'm okay with dispatching.
But you like this better.
I prefer Yardmaster.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm like that too. He likes ordering trains around and telling them what to do, basically. Kind of like me. I guess. So yeah, we were working this, and you can view everything and whatever, which is cool. And especially if you have a lot of free time, this is one of the coolest programs to get into, because you can eventually work your way up into some of the bigger hump yards. They have working humps. They've had working humps for probably well over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be the hump operator at Oakwood. Does Oakwood have a hump? I can't remember. Maybe not.
Oakwood doesn't.
No.
From being there, it does not.
I don't think Oakwood does, but Toronto Mac certainly does.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's another one that you did, but I can't remember what it was.
You can kick cars in this. Some of the physics are a little bit wonky, but you get to control the cars and let them keep rolling or whatever. But that's okay. That's not the point. As long as it's about freight yard management, which is what I like. What surprised me was Emmett said that the background was actually distracting. And I was like, oh, well, that makes my job a lot easier. Because as cool as it looks, the whole purpose is you're not trying to represent what you're doing you're not trying to represent what you're seeing. Your whole job, people, when they hire people for railroads, it's not about eye candy or watching the cool looking trains go by. You're busy doing a task at hand. But I mean, Scott was even mentioning in some of the posts on the RTS forums or Wikia, saying that he was talking about car knocking and a few other things. I'm like, whoa, I don't know if I want to go that far, but anyways, but that's a possibility, and so is the economics. Emmett's been talking about, well, we can have the economics too. I'm like, yeah, we can. I'm not worried too much about the economics, at least not at first, but I mean, if an industry makes money on a carload and whatever, then okay. There's a lot of different ways to go with that. So anyways, this is cool. If you have a lot of time, I highly recommend it. I want to end this on a I want to end the Freight Yard Manager part on a positive note, because this is something that I spent, especially if you have a lot of time. What happens is, if you don't have a lot of time, though, it's very hard to be a yardmaster of the bigger yards, and the bigger yards are sometimes the more interesting ones to operate, because if you have a lot of traffic flow coming in and you have a lot of time, those that have a lot of time get rewarded with a lot of trains at a lot of big yards, and you can have a hell of a lot of fun. And I had a hell of a lot of fun with this program for years. So I'm glad to see they're still doing updates on this. I haven't been in this so long that I really don't know what the hell I'm doing, which is cool. But I wasn't in it to be a part or rejoin or anything like that. I did send an email, say, yeah, I'm interested in putting it in, but maybe that was to, just maybe fall back on it if I need more inspiration. But my whole purpose is to develop. I really feel that way, because I'm at the point right now where I feel, I'm starting to feel like, Emma, is that what you want to do? What? I'm glad you're listening to me.
I'm listening to you. I'm just confused about what you're saying.
Is that what you want to do? Develop?
Yeah.
Okay. Simple question.
I just don't know simple questions.
Yeah, you're not good with simple questions. I see that.
I'm probably better with complicated questions than simple questions.
Okay. So, this is what you're seeing now. Obviously, this looks very rudimentary in comparison. They say some of the best games out there are the ones that have to do with content and playability and in-depthness. Like, you saw something today that didn't have much for graphics, but it had a lot of menus, it had a lot of depth to it. It looked interesting to you. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep, it caught my eyes.
Even
though it really didn't.
Yeah, well, it caught your brain more than your eyes, really.
Yeah.
Your eyes said to your brain, like, "Ooh, this is challenging." We play card game. We were playing card games the other day. I'm just like, yeah, we gotta play card games more often. Well, yeah, sure, why not? I'm all for that. Simple things like card games, but so what we started looking at when we did this here is, first I'll go back to Train Dispatcher 3 for a moment. And for those of you familiar with Train Dispatcher 3, there is also some territories out there that simulate yards. I don't know if you knew about this, Emmett. The yards?
Don't know.
Okay, what happens is there's basically ways in which they use the train dispatcher to simulate merging of trains. So what they do is they simulate yard control. So they use a train dispatcher display to simulate yard controls. What you would see isn't quite looking like this, but in most, well, it's certainly not looking as, basic and big circles and whatever. I mean, we'll pretty it up a bit, but the bottom line is, like Freight Yard Manager, where things are moving, in reality, a yard control operation, and I've never actually been in the office of a yard office as trains are coming in and out, or a hump center, or anything, any type of schematic. That's something that we should look on YouTube as well. If we're gonna do things on YouTube, it would be nice to research what exactly some of these systems look like. So, what I have seen, at least in some of the pictures and images, I've seen a similar display, not exactly looking like that. You certainly can't control the throttle, the brake, and the speed of the trains, and I don't even know if I'm not mistaken. So what happens is, as a train comes in, it goes across an AEI scanner, so that the yard center... You know what an AEI scanner is, Emmett?
I think I don't.
You think you don't? Okay, well, I'll explain it. That way everybody knows. The AEI scanner is wayside devices that will... Every car in North America has a electronic chip.
I did know it.
Oh, okay, you did know it. So they have an RFID chip on them. And at various strategic locations, there are AEI detectors that will basically report to the information center for the railroad that the train has arrived at a certain location. Once that's fed in to the computer system, it then becomes the data points for inbound trains. So if you're arriving an inbound train on a certain track, or if you prepare switch lists, it all derives from that original information coming inbound off of the RFIDs and the AI scanners. I could go so far as to simply use a screen and update it and say, okay, the train has arrived, and you're waiting for a few minutes for it to update, and then it updates. But in reality, I would imagine the Yardmaster is not only busy getting on the phone or talking on the radio to the yard crews or whatever else duties are involved in a modern yard operation. But instead of doing that, I thought it would be kind of cool to actually visually see it. Similar to Freight Yard Manager, you would actually see these icons move across the map, and that would allow it to basically so what you basically see here in this very rudimentary diagram is you've got the green and yellow targets for like the first mainline switch, if you want to call it, is set for the main line. There's 4 cars there. I didn't put any more cars. I just copied and pasted a bunch of squares to represent cars. And then yard track number 1 and 2 is set to normal for the ladder. 3 is set to reverse, and then 4, where the rest is just into a stub. So the yellow is reversed, so that you have the ability, if these are either remote switches, whether they're remote switches or manual switches, it doesn't matter. The key here is depending upon access levels. If depending upon access levels, control levels, who's controlling what. Is it going to be AI? Is it going to be command based? Is it just going to be assignment based? I'm not sure. I haven't explored it that far. First and foremost, though, I want to start at the design level. The design level is going to be for anybody to create a map. Since I'm not going into a 3D simulator, and I don't expect anybody to pay money for the actual maps themselves, I'm not going to be in any form trying to sell maps or data. What I will be selling is the simulator that runs the data. The community is going to be the one that creates the maps. They're the ones that are going to create the waybills, the demand. And if we have economics or the ability to put economics in, I'm all open to do that. They're the ones that are going to create the economics. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. You can talk,
I know.
Okay. Well, you just like listening to me talk. Okay.
I'm letting you talk.
Okay. So, what in order to design a yard, it's pretty simple, actually. It's going to be based on a coordinate system. So let's say, for coordinates' sake, X and Y. It's not going to be what you see is what you get. I could do that. I could do that in the form of, for those familiar with Track Builder, I could do that in the form of that. I would prefer not to. I prefer to go right into the raw data and basically do it old school and let people use graph paper, and if they want to use graph paper, go ahead and use graph paper and figure it out for themselves, or just do trial and error. So for this example, let's just say, and I'm going to go ahead and draw on this real big. So let's just say here, and I'll use, I don't know what we're going to use, purple. Nice light purple. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. So, wow, that's almost looks white. So a basic XY coordinate grid. And let's say we design it so that the track sections are, let's say this is, I don't know. Let's just say, for sake of argument, this is at X10. And it's at Y15, I guess. I don't know. Well, let's just say it's at Y15. It's down here, or wherever the hell it is. So 15 down, 10 across. What's going to happen is each track section is going to run from coordinate. So you're going to specify the start and end point. So you'll run all the way from X10, coordinate Y15, X10, all the way to coordinate Y15, X, 20 or something like that. Likewise, switches, or sorry, like as far as the ladder goes, maybe there'll be some connection into the ladder, maybe not, I'm not sure. Might do it in a 45-degree angle, might not. May not care. I may use it at this angle anyways and have that represent 1 and that represent 1, even though it's not quite square, but it makes more sense. I mean, 45-degree angle is fine too. It doesn't matter. This isn't quite a 45-degree angle, but I can use that too. So let's assume for a moment that this is a 45-degree angle. Then what you're doing is you would start the next section at X11, Y16 to wherever. Then you would create the ladder section, and you would create the length and do that as well. So each one would specify the length. It would specify any grade changes. So if there was a grade change partway down the yard, or if it was a bowl or something like that, it would play into how cars would operate physics-wise. So if it's coming into a bowl, it's going to, it's going to slow down. It's going to speed up a little bit as it comes in. The classic bowl, it gets down, and then it gets towards the end. It's going to suddenly enter into another track section that joins, and then boom, it's going to, it's going to slow itself down drastically. I want that physics involved in each and every yard design. How to do it gradually and in 3D, I don't know. That's a lot of stuff that I really don't want to get too detailed as far as the physics go, because the physics aren't as important as the yard management is. The yard management is the main thing. But the physics still are important. You don't want to stop on a dime and all that other crap. Or it doesn't want to become, you don't want to become a model railroad, put it that way. Or at least I don't. So, do you have anything to add, dude?
Don't have much to add to that.
No? No ideas?
Not on the design standpoint. I don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you can talk about it.
I do have one thing that may be useful for the ladders. For example, if you were to have double track segments, for example, coming into the yard, if you had a double track segment,
mm-hmm.
you can use, if like, maybe you don't think that that's far enough for a Y scale, you could say Y track 1 X, Y, whatever the number is, X, whatever the number is, track 2, track 1. You could do something like that.
Oh, you mean if it wouldn't... Well, you're always... the thing is, and the reason why originally I was going to go so far as a pixel count.
Oh, wow.
And that was my original thought, that I was going to go based on pixels. Because a lot of drawings are made based on pixels. And the program will have to figure out how many pixels there are between each segment. Ideally, it would work for 10 pixels. But the view. See, that's the other thing with Freight Yard Manager is I wanted to be able to zoom in because to really see in detail what was happening at a certain end of the yard, and I couldn't. I was stuck in a view that it gave me a full scale yard, but there's sometimes where I want to get deep into the view and see exactly what's going on so that I can operate my train. But really, trains that are spaced aren't going to be spaced anymore, and even if they are not, it really doesn't matter. What's important is that the schematic doesn't have to necessarily represent what it actually looks like. However, the schematic has to incorporate what the conditions are, or the length of the track is. The length of the track is very important. That's more important than the grade, because you don't want to overflow tracks. And this is going to have to scale appropriately to allow so much tracks. That's another thing to consider, is this is going to have to scale so that when you're doing these ladders, it's going to have to scale to represent how many tracks there is. One thing, weakness with TD3 is it's very restrictive as far as angles that you can run with tracks. So that's another thing. I mean, you might have to. I don't want to get into the whole thing with Train Dispatcher where they're restricted to certain angles. I think they're restricted to left and right running, I think. So that's going to be a little tough, I suppose, but hopefully I don't have to worry about that so much. But at the very least, I think I can get it to 45-degree angles and actually run off of 45-degree angles. So hopefully that's a good enough compromise. I don't think we need to go beyond 45-degree angles, though. Even if in the real life it is, say, 20 degrees apart or whatever, or the crossing's 20 degrees, having a 45-degree angle is fine. I wanted to make it as simple as possible for people to create maps. Because the reason why Microsoft Train Simulator is still very popular to this day, well, I shouldn't say it because it's not really very popular to this day. It's actually, from what I hear, is dying. That's what I've heard. And I don't know because I'm not part of the MSTS community. I just hear things. So, hearsay, whatever, rumor. I want to be able to have people who have creative juices, people like Scott, people like yourself, Emmett, anybody who has creativity that they want to put into something and design economic, whether it be economic. I'm all for economic systems. I'm all for adding features to the game or the simulation that would be part of a real yard's function. And as far as industries go, that's going to be another thing that's going to be involved. There's probably going to be a similar display to go into various industries or to switch various industries. I don't know. I'm not sure how I want to do that exactly, or if I'm going to have it so that it spots at certain things and spot locations. Because some industries are very basic. That's one thing with Freight Yard Manager is it does have a lot of the industry. It doesn't have all the industries. It has a lot of the industries in and around yards, but it really misses out on a lot of industries. Ontario has only so many maps and all that, and it's because it gets really boring in certain areas. So you can have an industry in the middle of nowhere. Yeah,
practically.
I mean, you even think of if you want to go back to Run 8, go out in Needles. Some of those industries are just as simple. Now, mind you, they can be put on the same screen and put into a different segment or window or something like that, so that the outer industry control window could have multiple panes. just like you have multiple yards, and they don't have to be in the 45 degree, or they don't have to be in the same segment. They could be in multiple panes on the same screen or whatever. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that yet, but at least get the dynamics down, get the trains to start switching, or being able to switch the dynamics, the physics, figure out how I want to do that, and then hopefully while I'm doing that, and I can do some of the tests of the various switches and how they function. Maybe play around with AI. I'm not really worried about AI just yet. AI is something I've never considered for Yardmaster yet, but I know it's possible. It's just a matter of taking human decisions and data and processing it. So, but for now, I'm not worried about AI. I'm just worried about getting the trains in, figuring out how to do the various things. There's enough people to run various yards everywhere, be it single player or whatever. And most of the trains are running on main lines. This isn't going to be about running on main lines or honking at grade crossings. And I'm not worried about sounds. I'm not worried about time of day. All those things that you would have in a 3D simulator, I'm not worried about.
Weather, even.
Weather you could play into.
Yeah, possibly.
But I'm not going to. Not at first, unless there's a reason.
Not at first, I wouldn't either.
I mean, even Run 8 doesn't really play that much into weather. I know it plays into a bit with wind, I think, but from what I've been told, but anyways, I don't know. Well, talk about the economics. You have ideas with economics. Scott's been mentioning about economics.
So, if economics was added, I think what you could do with economics is you could have it as whatever company you would work for, like whatever, it doesn't matter, would gain money from a shipment from an industry to possibly another industry or whatever.
Well, it's going to be to another. It's always shipping to another industry, or or a port.
Yeah, or a port or something.
Yeah.
And
which is technically an industry.
And you gain money from doing whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the tycoon side of things plays in.
Okay.
Not really as a tycoon,
okay.
But what I was thinking is, you have the routes already. You have that done, right?
Yeah.
But what you have to do is you have to literally make the route that the train goes on, like whatever it does. And you have to get enough money to start off like your own empire. You have to have, like, you start with like a loan of something, and then you buy.
You're now into the tycoon phase.
Yeah, it's somewhat like a tycoon.
No, that is.
Yeah, it's tycoon. It's.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a tycoon version, possibly, or something.
Well, this is but a tycoon version. Because
I don't think it would work with a Yardmaster.
No, it wouldn't.
It certainly wouldn't.
No. See, and this is where I'm having a hard time. I'm open to having economics involved, or some type of reward system or competitiveness, even competing railroads, perhaps.
Have a quality system, possibly.
Yeah, how fast? Quality as in quality of service.
Yeah, quality of service.
So quality of service basically would play into on-time performance, which can be measured. Level of service, which can be measured. So those factors can certainly go play. I mean, Train Dispatcher had the ability to measure if you were delayed, how much time you were delayed. So it did have those metrics in there. It didn't really do much with them. It counted how long, say, for example, a train was stopped in a block, but it really didn't analyze why a train was stopped in a block, because trains have to stop in blocks all the time just because they're on single track, and it's not because they're being delayed because the dispatcher screwed up. It's because that's all the track there is, and he just happens to be the lower priority. Even Z trains, the highest priority trains or whatever, sometimes have to stop based on other Z trains or simply to keep the flow going. So yeah, it was really difficult to see, to do anything with it other than the fact that it displayed how many lost minutes you were, or I guess an incentive to say, okay, well, hey, I dispatched really well today because I only had 200 lost minutes. But I never really bothered too much with that, and it actually never really deterred me from running Train Dispatcher. I always kept playing it because I liked dispatching, and in repeat playability. Repeat playability is something that you're interested in doing it again because the situation is changed enough or dynamic enough to create a different situation that you're not going to have every day. And that usually had to do with the amount of traffic, had to do with things like switch failures, signal failures. Well, they had derailments, but that was kind of goofy. I never liked how they did those. Maintenance away workers. The maintenance away workers were actually pretty scheduled. They weren't random enough for my liking. The train sizes were not randomized at all. They were always the same. They always did the same size, same type of work. Hot box detectors did their thing. Crew changes were randomized to some extent, I believe. No, they weren't. No, the train, the crew times were always the same. What happened was the trains, if they got delayed too much on the territory, they didn't adapt to the crew change time, so the crew change time really wasn't adaptive. So there was times where if a train was really late and he had very little crew time, he could expire as soon as he entered the territory, which would cause a logjam, which is something that's not very good. But because it's unrealistic too. All of a sudden, hey, train arrived on territory, and boom, there he is, and train arrived on territory, train expired. I'm like, okay, well, gee, that's nice. He just blocked my entrance exit, and of course it's an exit too. So now nothing can get there. I have to call a crew change, and it takes 2 hours minimum. It takes 2 hours minimum to get a crew out there if you haven't ordered it.
Well, wouldn't that suck?
Oh, that happened all the time in Train Dispatcher. It was one of the things It's one of the things when you activated crew times. I love crew management too. Crew management has nothing to do with dispatching so much. Crew dispatchers are totally different than dispatchers. Sometimes they do the role, but they don't do as much. You can have a crew dispatcher dispatch a huge amount of territory compared to regular dispatchers, just because they're just dealing with the on time of the crews and the availability of the crews. But yeah, so that's a lot. But I long story short, just dispatching was fun enough for me. And I know Scott, in the message that he was saying in the forums, he was mentioning about the economic side of things, and he's talked about it in having the business and having people basically having their industries or having their own companies and stuff like that. I'm having a hard time. I'm open to doing it as long as the basics of this is in here. I'm open to trying ideas. So I'm not dead against it. I just don't know how it would work. when you can't build the territory. I want people to be able to build whatever they want. So if they want to add worlds, and that just happens to be part of the network, because when you get into tycoon style stuff and you mix it with a 24/7 type simulation, the problem with that is, where does the time frame come into play? Because it takes, when you're building a new rail yard facility, it could be a 5-year project to just build a yard. It could take 1-2 years just to build an industry in real life.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you
Yeah.
how do you see what I mean? And if you were going to go the tycoon route as saying the tycoon was priority, well, the tycoon can be better if it has some of the better functionality of what it really happens in yard operations, what really happens in car management, what happens in operations and dispatching. But at the same time, it's still going to be down, if you really want it to one-to-one scale, it's going to be huge. And the more you build, the bigger the world is going to get, and in theory, the bigger the lag is going to get. Because now you're introducing a whole lot. You started off with a little bit of data. Now you're dealing with a whole whack of data. But I don't know. I'm open to those ideas. I haven't been able to quite figure it out. So anyways, was there any others about that? Do you want to add on to rebuttal?
I was gonna add on that what I thought is maybe you could have like certain groups or certain areas that have their own company, like their own railroad company.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which one it is, but based on realistic times and depending upon the era that you've chosen, you can choose what company would own which, and you compete against AI. It's kind of for a different type system, but I feel like it'd be good to have one that tycoon that you don't build in, but you try to make a profit in.
Yeah, and I think Scott's in for that. I think that's the same idea that Scott's at. So the tycoon, or sorry, it's not a tycoon. It's about incentive. So
it's like you're starting like kind of like a short line or a unit company. You're trying to get profit from just your rail. You're not trying to expand. The railroad's already built. You're already in there. You just gotta.
Well, so the railroad's already in there. If the railroad's already in there,
depending upon the time of the
then the metrics that you're really looking at is. Well, there's a lot of things. Number one, I'm going so far as to thinking that the entire network could be run in AI if necessary. So if it's being run in AI, then you could still simulate the metrics, but the metrics would actually be number of tons moved, because they'll measure everything in tons of freight. Then they can go with profit margin, loss, operating costs. So you can compare what certain railroads have versus others. I suppose you could deal with mergers and acquisitions, but I don't know. I guess believe me, I have a sound mind when it comes to economics. I understand economics and investing and budgets. Being able to decide how many crews to hire. But every time I think of that, that's screaming tycoon at me. And to me, if it's screaming tycoon at me, this isn't a tycoon simulator that I'm thinking of. Because what you're seeing here in order for it to be a tycoon simulator, you almost have to specify what areas you want to build, where you want to connect to, how many yard tracks you want. You almost have to have the editors in game, which kind of goes away from the whole start of this video that I was saying. Is you have an XY coordinate system, people are able to build the maps the way they want, and therefore you're running off of said maps. If I have it in-game generated, then there's a build menu that would be part of this, and then somehow you're deciding what yard tracks you're going to build, which yard tracks you're going to demolish. There would be a cost involved to that. You're deciding which industries you want to conquer. Then you're going into a whole map, a world map.
I'm not thinking that it would necessarily fit into this version of the game, but possibly as a different version of the game later on. I
don't want to think about a different version of anything. This is Emmett, honestly, this is why when you originally earlier today said go with RTS Dispatcher. Mm-hmm. And I said okay. And then you said about inspiration. And you've already seen Train Dispatcher. I can't really inspire you any more than showing you that and showing you the dispatching in Run 8. Those are the two closest things I can show you. So dispatching, you've already seen what that's all about. And you're really not interested in dispatching anyways, and you even said that. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I could download Freight Yard Manager and show you that. And as soon as I showed it to you, the first thing on your it was like, hey, I like how that switches. Even though it was very hard to figure out, it took me a while to remember what some of the commands were. I remember downloading stuff off the network and chatting, and took me a while to figure out that W was the whistle and instead of H being the horn, which really is pointless anyways. I mean, it's just sound and eye candy basically. And it was like, okay, I'm looking at going one way, and the reason why I didn't go I've been back and forth on this for a bit. I was going to go with the dispatcher first. The reason why I was going to go to the dispatcher first was the dispatcher would control how long a train was delayed or expedited in between yard locations. So I wanted to, number one, I wanted to have a better dispatcher program because I can program a better dispatcher program than TD3. I keep saying it. I haven't done it only because I don't miss dispatching that much. I've done dispatching for years now. In a simulated sense, Run 8, or before that, TD3. So I've done plenty of dispatching. I haven't burnt out from it, but I've gotten my fill of dispatching. So I'm not really worried about it. That's kind of why the only reason why I'm still kind of scouring my last rays of hope of Run 8 with Scott these days, trying to run in a modified environment. We're running kind of Mojave Yard and just some industries or whatever, and for the sake of doing it, I guess. So because it's the only thing that's running, and there's no competition and nothing out there that really matches it, I guess. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is, you want a program, right? Mm-hmm. You better figure out what it is that your heart's into.
I I want to do a Yardmaster. I definitely want to do that first.
Okay, well, remember these things take. I don't know if you've never developed before. These things take time.
I didn't realize that.
Even though it's not 3D graphics like Run 8, it's a lot of. It's going to take a lot of time. And the payoff sometimes it takes a long time. It takes a lot of debugging. It takes a lot of. And a lot of that I'm going to be doing on my own time anyways. You're not going to be sitting there, but at least, getting through that. And I'm just, when you start talking about economics and all this other stuff, I'm like, what? How am I supposed to throw that into the game? I'm trying. When you're programming or doing systems analyst or whatever, you're looking at ways that you can expedite development quickly. So this whole XY coordinate thing, that was the first thing I thought of today, and thought, yeah, I can probably develop some maps really quickly. I'm not even worried about real world maps, because I'm going to let the community do that. I'm going to just create. I'm going to create some maps and regions. Probably have some off-world spawn points. Like once you get to the left side of the map, it's going to generate a connection to it. It's going to generate a connection to another map, and it's going to simulate the distance traveled. Which is also, when you say connect to other programs, I'm not going actually to the Tycoon next. I'm going to the Dispatcher next.
Yeah, I know.
So if there's anything, the RTS Dispatcher is the next program, not RTS Tycoon.
I know. I don't feel like that's the next either.
Well, Tycoon you might not see until you're a teenager.
Possibly.
And by then, who knows? But I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Tycoon games, and I can see improving upon something like. I can see improving on something like, what do you call it? Transport Fever. Transport Fever it's a fun game, but like I said, there's I know the weaknesses in that game that make me cringe. And the cool thing about it is it's still a pretty. I mean, there's another one that came out this year. I can't remember the name of it. There was another Tycoon game that came out earlier the past year.
Oh yeah, Railroad Empire.
Yeah.
It's that one I didn't really get into. It's good apparently. It's really good.
Oh yeah.
I just never got into it. It's not as much micromanaging as
well, that's good.
As Transport Fever, but it's very, very similar. It's not quite as much micromanaging, but it's almost the exact same game.
It's almost, yeah. So it's got a lot of eye candy and.
It has more eye candy than Transport Fever.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
And I find, but it has a sense of realism to it as well.
Well, yeah. Eye candies can be realistic as long as it doesn't take away from the realism, I suppose. But
the only thing is it's just trains, so a lot of people are speculating that Transport Fever is better. Because you have
but Transport Fever is trying to do everything, so yeah, I know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like it, but
they don't have yards either, so it's fairly simplistic.
Yeah, but they're not train simulators. That's why. Or they're not Yardmaster simulators. They're not freight yard managers. Like I said, freight yard manager is the best best railroad simulator on the planet, in my opinion. Even though I haven't run it in over 8 years, I don't think there's anything that beats it. I mean, RTS was up there, but I wouldn't call it a railroad simulator by any means. And Run 8's own little doohickey thing, I mean, it's okay. It gives it some purpose, and it's cool and all, but I think, honestly, the freight forwarding in Run 8, I think, was a step down from what RTS did in version 1. Though RTS was by no means perfect. So, but anyways, so you're okay with this, and
of course I am.
oh, okay, of course you are. Okay. But you guys have ideas as far as the economics. I mean, let me know how you want to, or think I can implement that. I'm going to basically create the physics, or create make sure that the physics are involved. A way in which I can specify the file types and the data structures, so that from the structures I'm able to create the graphical. It's not going to be eye candy. And it's not going to look as necessarily as rudimentary as this. Obviously, I mean the tracks are going to connect, and you're going to see colorful cars. They're not going to all be the same size. I mean, it's going to be scalable, so that if you want to zoom in, it's going to be able to redraw and stuff like that. I have to look into what game engine I want to use still. We haven't wrote a piece of code yet. That maybe, I mean, we're already almost at 4:30. That's something maybe we can do later tonight, or figure out. I mean, get some supper and think about things. We talked about we were going to do something on YouTube, but I can't remember what. Just now. We can do that while we eat, but I got to cook supper anyways. But I don't know. Doesn't matter. So, anyways, we're just rambling on and wasting time. But I thought I'd share that with you guys and let you know that we are going to be doing this. You're the one that's inspired to do this more than me, right?
You probably, yeah. I'm probably more inspired than you are.
Well, then you're the one that has to push me, and I said this before, and you never really pushed me much.
Yeah, I kind of forgot to.
Well, now you have the idea that I'm presenting. You got to come up with ideas and say, hey, this is, the simpler the better. Keeping it simple is always better, at least to get something going.
That's
Especially,
probably going to be hard for me.
No, but Emmett, the thing is, you've never coded. So for you,
I've coded on small scale.
Okay, but that's what you have to start out with. You can worry about the details later on. I mean, if you want to talk about a tycoon game, there's something for your teenage years, and who knows, by then virtual reality and everything, you might have a tycoon in virtual reality. I'd love to see
how that would work.
Well, that's how you learn. You learn all these things. I'd love to see a tycoon game in 1-to-1. The processing power will become better. All these things will become better with time. I'm Derail Valley. I'm curious where that thing goes. But like I said, there's no competition out there for this. This is a genre that's wide open as far as I'm concerned. There's still a lot of It's kind of sad because railroads are deteriorating. Everything's turning into fast freight, intermodal, commuter and passenger services.
Which eventually will probably be put out by something else too.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, and with each generation, unfortunately, the way of lives. I mean, Scott mentions things that really don't interest me, probably because I've never seen it or been exposed to it. And that's just what, unfortunately, that's what happens with every generation. And technology changes. I've never had to deal with seeing the operations involved in a steam operation. So those are things. I remember the cabooses, and I remember why they were there and the purpose of them. But other than that, that's as far back as in technology. I know what a semaphore signal is. I know how it works.
I know a little bit about semaphores, not very much.
Yeah, but they're fine. And towers. I know how towers work. I've done tower. I've been in tower simulators. That's another idea that I had at one time, was a tower simulator. Remember that?
I remember that when we were talking about that. We were doing F Tower Simulator.
We were going to do an F Tower Simulator, yeah.
Maybe eventually.
Well, it's all.
I remember being in Unreal Engine and trying to.
Unreal, yeah, Unreal. Unreal Engine is unreal. It's beyond my ability at the moment, so I'm not worried about it.
It's
Well, you start simple, and then you got the brains. You wanna go into it further and show me. Hey, great. You're gonna have to teach me some things. But anyways, guys, that's it for now. I'm actually going to sign off properly this time, instead of just hanging up on you guys every time the damn phone rings.
This time we can say hasta la vista.
Hasta vista. Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, I won't save that. I don't care about that. It's already saved. So that's it for now, guys. I don't know when I'm going to do the next live stream. Maybe I'll do something with Scott, and talk a little bit more.
Don't think there'll be anything else today.
No, I think we got to get to work on this and
Yeah.
inspire. So, but freight yard managers out there, maybe I'm overlooking a few things with it. Maybe it's still fun or whatever. But there's a reason why I'm not into freight yard manager. And was looking for something else anyways, but that's just my own personal preference. It may still be something that you guys are interested in, but we'll see. Anyways, that's it for now, so I'll talk to you later. We'll talk to you later. Okay, we'll see ya.
Bye.